right, guys, we are back. This is the Shillan and Duffy Show on the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network and the SureDog Radio Network. I am your host. I am Keith Shillan. I am a writer for SureDog, for Cageside Press, and the executive producer of Loudmouth MMA. I am joined by always with the great Benjamin Duffy, senior editor of SureDog.com. Ben, last week we had 15 fights. This week we almost had half as many with only 8. How you feeling, my man?
I feel pretty good. You come from the same era I do, in which basically all UFC cards were 8 fights, and I thought that was the perfect number then. I still think it's the perfect number now.
Yeah, no, I definitely understand. I don't really care about like 15 fights, as long as if we could fix the commercials, like I don't have to watch the same Cricket Wireless commercial like at ESPN Plus, every single one. Let's get into it. We're recapping UFC Vegas 5 as the UFC is no longer at Fight Island, back in Vegas. I think to make it seem right, like one of us should just leave right now. Like one of us should just like right now say I can't do it, and the other one has to play ride solo, because that would fit the theme of this evening. As this is one of the most canceled fights card in history. I mean, I know Jay Petrie would have a status up to this, but I don't know if I remember. You know, obviously you have the old Brooklyn card with Conor and the bus thing, but this is up there with how many weird things happened. Should I? You know what? I'm going to do it. Let's talk about. Let me give you a little history of what happened. So, I don't know the exact order of when they came, canceled or whatever, but let's tell you what some of the cancellation was. The main event was originally supposed to be former UFC bantamweight champion Holly Holm going against Irene Aldana. Aldana tested positive for COVID-19 and was off the card. With also testing positive for COVID-19 was Vivian Arujau, who was supposed to take on Jennifer Meyer. So she was replaced by Joanne Calderwood. Let's see. John Young Park withdrew. Doesn't say why. In his matchup against Trevin Giles, replaced by Kevin Holland. Don Unjung withdrew with his fight with Ed Herman, was replaced by Gerald Mershad. Ketlin Vieira versus Yana Kunitskaya was originally on this card. It was bumped to a further date out. Luke Sanders pulled out against Chris Gutierrez, was replaced by Cody Duran. And that was all that happened up into this week. Now let's get to this week. Where should I start? Let's start with Ray Borg withdrew for undisclosed reason, which I think all of us can probably assume with the history of Ray Borg that he withdrew because of weight issues. I hope it wasn't a personal thing. We all know that he's had things with his son, which if there's anything going on with his son, then that definitely makes sense to pull out, but possibly a weight issue. He was supposed to take on Nate Manaz. Borg was replaced with Johnny Munoz Jr. Eric Spicely had a failed weight cut that he blamed on medication for antidepressants for basically damage he said he took in the Duran Win fight. He was supposed to take on Marcus Perez. He was replaced by, and I might butcher this guy's name, Charlie Ontiveros. But then,
that's exactly right.
Then is he from your area?
Yeah. Ontiveros is a local guy. I know him. Okay,
so then Ontiveros was not medically cleared, so that fight was scrapped. A couple days before, I forgot, a fight that a lot of people were really excited about. Timur Valiev pulled out of his fight against Jamal Emmers, was replaced by Vince Cachawera, and that got us to today. The day of the fight. We're taping this right after the event just ended, maybe about 20 minutes ago or so. On today's, it started with the People's main event getting canceled, and that was Ed Herman versus Gerald Meerschaert. Gerald Meerschaert tested positive for COVID-19 and his move up to light heavyweight take on Ed Herman was scrapped. Then am I missing any other ones? That's it. And then during the event, Trevin Giles fainted backstage, and his fight against Kevin Holland was canceled. So, is there any other cancellations I am missing?
No, I don't think so, but that is completely nuts. The whole thing about Giles just passing out backstage is a little bit alarming. So, certainly he's another local guy to me. Certainly hope he's all right. In fact, he and Charlie Ontiveros are primary sparring partners.
Okay.
So I hope it's not something they both have. I don't know what it was that caused Ontiveros not to be cleared. I haven't reached out to his coach or anything. I don't know if just he wasn't going to be able to make the weight in time, although that's strange because Ontiveros is normally a welterweight, so I really don't know.
Yeah, one thing you said, and I just want to correct it for the record, you said, I hope he's okay because he's a local guy. I think you want him to be okay no matter where he lives. Or is it just because he's from Texas? That's the only reason you want him to be okay?
Well, no, just obviously any human being, I hope their health
is
fine.
That's it. Ben Duffy and the people of Texas. It's going to be Texas versus the other 49 states, or just Texas versus the whole world.
Well, not just he's from Houston.
Yeah,
he's also a cop, so you hope he's fine as well.
That's it. There you go. That's it. We just if they're like us, we hope they're okay. If they're not like us, then if he lived in Delaware, screw him.
Yeah.
No, we do hope he's okay. Dana White said after the event that Joanne Calderwood actually passed out too. So I don't know what's going on in Vegas. Some weird stuff. So hopefully everybody. I mean, we watch people beat each other up. We have these violent encounters, and we cheer it on. Which is then it's weird for us to have to be like, I hope they're okay.
Yeah. I mean, because if somebody gets punched in the face and falls down, I'm prepared to deal with that. If somebody passes out for no reason, that's more alarming.
Yeah.
We're just going to find out there was a gas leak at the Apex this whole
Oh, God. Oh, my God. You know what? That would be the ultimate 2020. Breaking news on SportsCenter. There's a gas leak at the Apex, and every person at the UFC is getting rushed to the hospital. Yeah. Let's move on to the card. In the main event, we had Derek Brunson taking on undefeated, rising, I would say, budding superstar, Edmund Shahbazyan. He is the prodigy of Edmund Tarverdyan and arguably the most popular fighter in MMA history, or definitely the most popular female fighter in MMA history, Ronda Rousey. It was a matchup that I think we talked about this last week. I thought it was the right step up. I mean, he was around. You beat a guy like Brad Tavares the way you do. You get a guy like Derek Brunson. He wasn't ready. he just. But that to me, I see people. And so let me get the results. I'm being very professional. So Derek Brunson won this fight. He won by third round TKO. I was talking to Blaine Henry. I don't know if you're familiar with Blaine Henry. I was talking to him yesterday, and I texted him and I said, and shout out to Blaine. He's fantastic at what he does. I texted him right before I sent in the pics to you. I chickened out, and I said, I truly believe if Derek Brunson uses his wrestling, he wins this matchup. But Derek Brunson will probably not use his wrestling, and I should have looked. Because he's on a 3-fight winning streak. In the last 2 fights, he did use his wrestling. And he did it again today. And that was a big difference. To me, the difference in the fight was this is the second time we've said Edmund Shahbazyan look human in the UFC. I mean, he's looked fantastic. But the 2 fights that he's had trouble was obviously this fight. And then the decision win he got over Darren Stewart. It was a split decision. Mm-hmm. And both those fights were very similar, where the guy was pushing a close quarters battle. Stewart didn't want a close quarters battle. He wanted to throw heat, but his pressuring forward, hulking, more physical imposing person. He's a grown man. He's, I don't know how old he is, but you're talking about 27, 28, 29. Brunson's in his 30s. They're filled out where Shahbazyan, I think, is still like, coming into his body. But Shahbazyan didn't like that and turned into a grappling match and struggled. Brunson was the opposite. He used his imposing body to turn it into a grappling match, and I don't think Shahbazyan was ready for that physicality. And once he got him on the ground, Brunson did some really good work, especially at the end of the second round, hurting him really bad. Almost got the fight stopped in the second. The fight comes out in the third round, and Brunson drops him, kind of follows up with some little, not much for ground and pound, but Herb Dean stopped it. Let's start with this. Are you okay with the stoppage? Because it was kind of quick. If you took the stoppage, just the highlight of the stoppage in a vacuum, and that's all you had, you could say, like, wow, that's a really, really quick stoppage.
You could, especially if you didn't have the end of the second round as context, because that could easily have been stopped at the end of the second. I actually don't have a problem with this stoppage. This is the way I would want it to happen. It could have been a buzzer beater stoppage at the end of the second. Between the second and third rounds, they had the doctor check on Shahbazyan. Both the doctor and the referee asked him if he wanted to continue. At that point, I think it's understood that he was kind of on notice. You're going to need to do something because I've got my finger on the button at this point. Why let a 22-year-old take more of a beating than he needs to learn his lesson? We're talking about someone who's very young, still developing, wasn't going to come back and win the fight at that point. I mean, he was gone. Why let him take more punches than he needed to? I was fine with it.
Yeah, I'm okay with it too. But you do have to have that context. And so, I mean, you can't always judge a fight by little, moments of film. You got to judge what was going on before that. And yeah, he was hurt badly, almost stopped at one point. The commentating teams said oh, he's out. And he kind of woke back up and he might have had a flash knockout. Yeah, when you give warnings to a fighter and then immediately they get dropped, kind of turtles up. If Herb Dean doesn't stop it, then he lets it go another 5 seconds. It's probably going to get stopped then. I'm okay with it. Nolan King once said on Loudmouth's air, and shout out to Nolan from MMA Junkie, and I loved it. I steal it all the time. I'm gonna stop giving him shout outs and see if I continue saying it, people will forget that Nolan said it and I can kind of get credit. He talked about a pendulum, like there's there's a range or a pendulum or where you have at one end is good stoppage but kind of late. One is good stoppage kind of early, and then you have that perfect round. To me, this was as far to the kind of early as you can get, but still in that range where it was okay, based on all the stuff before it. So, but I got to ask you this question before we move on, because we're going to talk about the fighters. Herb Dean was the referee of this one. Herb Dean was the big controversy last week. Dana White addressed it with the Dan Hardy. Did Herb Dean stop this on the early side because of the criticism of Dan Hardy?
I don't know if certainly it had to be foremost in his mind.
Yeah. And I was saying I can't make you answer what was in his mind. Yeah. I'm just saying, if you had to guess,
he's human, and among referees, he is one of the ones who is most transparent and most forthright about what's going on behind the scenes. I mean, for many years, he was the only major referee who would even do interviews. For years and years.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it was present in his mind, but I also think that no matter what, he's been doing this long enough that he is out there just trying to do his best job each time. He has some bad nights at the office, has good nights at the office, but I can't imagine it's just a direct reaction. I'm just going to stop every fight as early as possible tonight. He did his best job tonight, and it happened to be earlier. I think he was definitely more open and vocal in his communication with everybody than he has been in other recent cards.
Yeah, I think Herb Dean, and let's go back to last, and I don't want to spend time on this, but Herb Dean, there was a lot of people. I mean, we debated. I think it's the first thing we've really debated where you were more on the Herb Dean side, I was more on Dan Hardy's side. But MMA fans were divided and I think that was based on who Herb Dean is, where he gets a lot of leeway because of course he's going to have bad moments when. Yeah, I talk about when people talk about the NFL draft, and they'll talk about, Mel Kiper got that one wrong. It's like, well, when you make predictions on every single fighter for the last, every single NFL player for the 150 players or whatever for the last 20-something years, yeah, you're going to get someone wrong. And you got to get some right. But that's what I kind of feel like with referees. The more you do, you're going to get a lot of wrong, you get a lot right. That said, if the UFC came, say, to Rhode Island, the UFC's never been to Rhode Island, that's where I live, and they used the Rhode Island Athletic Commission, which is a bunch of nobodies. I don't even know who these guys are. But they had James Bottenworth, in his first UFC card, and he was in the same situation. I don't think fans would have defended him like Herb Dean did. They did Herb Dean. So as a human being, though, I'm sure heading into this night, he was a little nervous. Like, God, please don't have a late stoppage. Please don't have any controversy. Let me just get through the night. I don't think many people are going to have a big stoppage. But if all you see is a highlight, if you miss the event and you catch it on SportsCenter and you see the little this, you might think it was a bad stoppage. Let's move on to the two fighters. Derek Brunson, I think he looked really good. I think we saw good Brunson and bad Brunson in the same fight. The good Brunson is controlled Brunson, a guy who will add in his wrestling game. He's always had a fantastic defensive wrestling game. You go back, he's always had. Actually, I think he's always had a good offensive wrestling. This is a guy who, in his fight against Yoel Romero, was winning the wrestling exchanges against Yoel Romero, who was a former world champion, a guy that was silver medalist in the Olympics, was favored to win the Olympics, and a guy who beat Cael Sanderson. If you're familiar with American wrestling, this is the guy that went undefeated in college, was an Olympic gold medalist. He beat him twice. Yoel Romero is as legit as they come. And Derek Brunson was actually winning wrestling exchanges against Yoel Romero. And then obviously this is MMA wrestling, not an actual international wrestling match. But that's good, Derek Brunson, and that's something that they talked about with him going to Hard Knocks 365 or Sanford, whatever they call it now, but I still call it Hard Knocks 365. The Black Zillions, they keep changing the name. That's good. But there was moments where he got too aggressive, he got clocked, he kind of he throws out all technique and just tries winning with pure explosion, athleticism, which, again, some guys, like when he did against Sam Alvey, it's fantastic when he does that. And other guys, if they're a lot more polished, it's going to make him pay. Now that Derek Brunson is on a 3-fight winning streak, I think it's the longest winning streak he has had, at least in a really long time. I don't want to say biggest. It's been
since
a while.
Before he fought Whitaker. Yeah.
Okay, so it's been a really long time since Derek Brunson's been on a 3-fight winning streak. He's been around forever, and it's really hard to change people's minds, especially at 36 years old. But do you like him more now? Are you more excited about Derek Brunson?
Yeah, I'm one of the ones who picked this fight wrong. And
as many did.
As many did. He was a 3-1 underdog for a reason. I knew he could beat Shahbazyan, but I didn't believe in him to do the things that would carry him to that victory. I just needed to pay closer attention. I still have the 5 years ago thing of him running at Robert Whitaker like an idiot stuck in my head. And clearly he's become a different fighter under the tutelage of Henry Hooft at whatever name they're hanging over the door of that gym right now. I just need to come back around on him and be like, okay, he is improving at age 36. He is on a 3-fight winning streak against very solid competition. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm more excited about Brunson than I have been since the Whitaker fight, and that was 2016. So,
all right. So I want to do something real quick. Let's take. Let me count it real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay, his last 14 fights. So now I'm going back a while. We're going back all the way to August 2014, which is obviously way too far to go back. But, you're talking just under 6 years. Of his last 14 fights, he's going 10-4. Okay? Let's just say good Brunson shows up for the 10 wins. We'll just throw him out. You think about Lyoto Machido's when he just ran forward and knocked him out. His explosion worked. Sam Alvey, same thing. Let's take his 4 losses. I think he beat Anderson Silva.
And either way, whether he deserved to win that one or not, it's not really indicative of his strengths and weaknesses as a fighter. That was a weird fight for him.
I think of his 3 losses, you had the Robert Whittaker, which one that kind of stands out in most people's mind. You have the Jacare Souza and Israel Adesanya. Of those 3 losses, I think the only one that really bothers me is the Jacare one. And I'll say this is because Adesanya is just a terrible stylistic matchup. I mean, he's the champion of the world. With his style, his blitzing style, if you can turn the corner like Israel Adesanya can, and is probably the best at not, avoiding attacks by simply, doing what elite strikers do, and that's just change an angle on a guy. Brunson's gonna have a hard time. The reason why Whittaker doesn't bother me that much, obviously, one is just Rob Whittaker. You're talking about a guy who would go on to win the title, one of the greatest middleweights of all time. But he had Robert Whittaker hurt.
Yes.
That's why it doesn't bother me, because he saw a guy hurt, he went in for a kill. He went way too aggressive, but while he's throwing these looping hooks and stuff, uppercuts, things he shouldn't do, if one of those land, it could be the end of the fight. And maybe he's actually in a title fight. He would have been on a ridiculously long winning streak. Say, you change Whittaker to a win, Anderson Silva to a win. You're talking about a 9-fight winning streak. That probably gets you a title fight.
Yeah.
He gets the right matchup. It's Michael Bisping. It's whoever. We could be talking about Derek Brunson as a world champion. As crazy as that sounds. So that said, is it crazy to think Derek Brunson could, as we just said, probably a terrible stylistic matchup for Israel Adesanya, against Israel Adesanya. Can he get himself way back to contention? Because the middleweight division is wide open.
It is. There's most of the people above him in the rankings are not good style matchups for him, but there's a possibility he might only need to beat one more guy.
Yeah, I agree.
To be right there. So you never know. And again, he's been fighting very differently than he did just a couple of years ago, win or lose. Not many fighters reinvent themselves or retool themselves in their mid-30s, 25-plus fights into their career. He is one who appears to be doing it, and he's not reinventing the wheel. He isn't bringing out new techniques that he didn't have 5 years ago. He is just fighting to his own strengths more consistently.
Yeah, and let's not forget that Derek Brunson, during this, he's opened up his own gym, which I never liked that idea when a guy's an active fighter doing that, and being his own coach for a while, because he was at Jackson Wink, left them. I think he was, where was he in, Carolina, somewhere in North Carolina or something like that.
Which is where he's from. So
he went back. Is it North Carolina? Is that where he was?
Yeah, he's from the Raleigh area, I believe.
Okay, yeah. So he went back to Raleigh or Charlotte or something. Opened up his own gym. I don't like that. You need a guy as your head coach. You need boxing coach. And I know when you open up your gym, you have those, but you're still the boss. You're training guys. I don't think that really works. Now, some guys it's worked out. A guy like James Krause has done well. A guy like Glover Teixeira has done well. But would they have done better if they weren't doing that? Yeah, possible. We don't know. That said, I agree that the guys ahead of Derek Brunson would be favored over him. But there's nobody ahead of him that I go, that guy definitely beats him. There's guys that I think he could still do very well. I still think he could do very well against Joel Romero. I think Darren Till would be an issue. He'd have to use the wrestling. But Whittaker, I still think would be an issue, but he had moments against Whittaker, and Whittaker looks like a different fighter. I think Derek Brunson, and I've always kind of been a little bit of a shill for Derek Brunson. I've always seen more in there than others, and I think there could be something with Derek Brunson. It's going to have to be soon. But yeah, I'm intrigued by Derek Brunson a little bit. Let's move on to Edmund Shahbazyan. This is the guy that I expected us to talk about more. Is this the hype train killer, or let me say, I'll say this because I always ask you the question. I'll tell you what I think, and you tell me where you stand. So usually, you scroll through MMA Twitter after any young fighter does. One or two things happen, and he's usually done by the same person. If the young fighter loses, it's I knew he was hype, way to go, hype train over. And if they win, it was like, oh, this guy's the real deal. And like they have both tweets lined up, which one they're going to send out. So are you looking at this loss as a hype train killer? Like this guy has major flaws and he was never that good? Or are you like me where I'm saying this is an early career loss? There was moments in this fight, especially in the first round, where you could argue that he might have even won the first round. That, man, he's 22. I'm not turned off by this. Like I'm still very intrigued by this guy.
I'm still very intrigued by him. I did think he won the first round. I wasn't scoring it officially for the site, but in my mind, as I'm writing up the recap, I did give him the first round.
Uh-huh.
I think he is a 22-year-old fighter who, at this point, through even some of his wins and now his first loss, his limitations have been laid bare. He has a serious gas tank problem. And he has a serious gas tank problem even when he doesn't appear to overexert himself in the first round. I mean, this time he won the first round, but it wasn't a complete barn burner. It was a pretty measured first round, and nonetheless, by a minute and a half into the second, he was clearly the more tired guy, and already Brunson was starting to roll downhill on him. And once Brunson got his hands on him, the difference in strength and size was obvious because Brunson looked like he outweighed him by 15 pounds. That is a serious problem for Shahbazyan. I'm not going to call end of hype train on anybody who's 22 years old and now 11-1. That's ridiculous. The thing that gives me pause that does not in a lot of other cases is that this is a disciple of Edmund Tarverdian who has been with him for basically half his life. Once he hits the ceiling of how good he can do at Glendale Fight Club, is he going to go someplace else? Or is he just going to ride or die with basically a father and older sister figure in Tarverdian and Ronda Rousey? If he was just the average 22-year-old super prospect, I wouldn't think as much about it. I mean, hell, how many chances have I given Aaron Pico in my mind as he's just jumped around from camp to camp?
Oh, I'm still. If you heard my prediction show at Bellator, I'm still riding that train. I'm still on that train. I was on that train before his last fight.
Same here, and even in his case, he started out at the Body Shop with basically his best friend growing up, in what's his name in AJ McKee. Yeah, but he was willing to kind of break from that and go until he found another camp that worked for him.
Yeah.
I just wonder if Shahbazyan will be able to get much better than he is now where he is, and if he'll choose to do anything about that. But no, the sky's still the limit for him.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things you said that intrigues me. The first thing, anytime someone mentions gas tank, one of the first things we always like to throw out is, move up a weight class. Usually you move up, you're quicker. You just made this face, and the reason why I said that is move up weight class. But I don't think that's the solution. So that's why you made the same face that I'm going to make. He's already struggling with guys who's physically more imposing than him. Could you imagine him moving up where guys are going to be even bigger and stronger? Yeah. You get a guy like a Dominic Reyes, who's not only is he bigger and stronger, he's probably a better athlete. Like there's better athletes, I think, at light heavyweight than there is, take out Yoel Romero. I mean, that guy's a once-in-a-lifetime guy. And then obviously there's a couple other guys, and Israel Adesanya and stuff. But I mean, generally speaking, I still think there's better athletes at light heavyweight. As I'm thinking across the divisions, neither one's that appealing right now. But the thing about the gas tank, like, why did he gas out in this one or slow down? I don't want to say gas up, but slow down a lot. I think a lot of that had to do with Brunson's strategy of could even lose the first round, but as long as he makes him work, we always know that wrestling is probably the one area of MMA that makes guys tire out the most. It's that clinch battling, the pushing, the pulling of weights. That's really hard. But gas tank, it's such an intriguing skill set, and I call it a skill set because some guys improve on that gas tank, and some guys never can. And so many fans will think, and fighters can correct me if I'm wrong, but I've always believed this. A lot of fans think, oh, the guy has a bad gas tank. He's not pushing himself harder in the gym. He's not doing enough road work. He's not doing enough sprints, the hills, whatever. And that's just sometimes not the case. Like, some guy's body just, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, build lactic acid easier than other people's. Everybody's bodies are different. Some guys have better fast twitch muscles than other guys, no matter what they do. There's guys who cannot lift a weight ever and just has this incredible fast twitch muscle. Other guys don't. And I think your lactic acid builds up in certain people better than it does in other people. And you can run and you can do it, and that will improve certain things, but there's like a limit. And we've seen that with fighters. There's some guys who just gas out quicker. So the question is, like, is this a area that he can improve, or is this one like, no, he's doing everything he can, and this is what you're going to get?
Well, I completely agree with you, and I also think that it's not just a matter of how big your tank is and how much fuel is in it, but how you step on the gas. The knock against BJ Penn forever was that, like, BJ has terrible cardio, BJ has a terrible gas tank. That's not true. BJ only got tired when he was losing. When he was winning and could dictate the pace, he had, what did he say to Shirk? He was like, I got enough gas to kick your ass, and he was right.
That's right.
The problem with Shahbazyan is, even when he's winning a round, just his motor idles so fast. He's like, whatever he's got in the tank, however big it is, he might be burning it faster than he needs to. And that may just come with reps. He may just need more fights to learn how to win a round without feeling like he just has to throw everything in the arsenal at the other guy and try to finish it in 90 seconds. He needs to learn how to win rounds.
Yeah.
He needs.
Yep. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, he needs to learn how to win rounds, and he needs to, get a little more patience and just not need to finish the fight the first time he lands something, because he is just burning the whole tank so quickly. It may not just be a matter of cardio. I'm sure he does plenty of cardio in his camps.
Yeah, there's a lot of things you said that I really like. One thing, like, if you go to MMA gym, so let me back up. When I talked about lactic acid, like, I'm not a doctor. I could be talking out of my ass. That's just, when I've talked to some people, that's what I believe that. But talk to these trainers, they know way more than me. So I just want to throw that out there. But if you go to an MMA gym and you see a guy who comes from a wrestling background and he starts boxing, he'll get way more tired than he does wrestling. And vice versa. You got a guy who comes from a boxing background, he'll get way more tired wrestling. And I think that comes from your experience. Like, I come from a wrestling background. I've wrestled a long time. I know where and when to conserve energy, where to rest, where I'm comfortable, where the guy's not a threat. This is where I can rest. Same with boxing. I might be boxing and I'm tensing up a lot. We always talk about fighters, where the guys who you could always see guys that have very high level striking. They're usually very loose. Their hands are loose. Sean Woodson's the guy I think of. Israel Adesanya is a guy very loose now. They're not tense up. Or a guy who's not spending a lot of time boxing, he tenses up too much, and then they're wasting, burning energy that they don't have. Maybe that's a situation that Shahbazyan's in right now, where he's in a situation where just getting more reps in, he'll get that experience, and he'll know. The other thing that you pointed out was not throwing everything hard. Well, in this fight, he had a lot of success early. He was striking. He was landing. One thing that really jumped on me is his vision. He has good vision. He sees things, and he has good counters. He saw the leg, like Brunson was coming with a leg kick and dropping his hand. He was hitting him with the right hand. But sometimes early success, finding something early success could backfire. Like he dropped Brad Tavares with a big shot where I felt like he was throwing a lot of single punches. He kept throwing it straight right down the pipe. And it seemed like he hit Brunson with it. He's like, all right, this is my punch. And it seemed like he was looking for it too much, and he was throwing power over it. The guys who are really good, a guy like Israel Adesanya, he always talks about, like, I see, I aim, and then I hit and fire. And it's not like, and there's guys who will throw punches that are just staying busy by throwing punches, but they're holding back. And then when they have the open, that's when they unload. Conor McGregor's a guy who does that really well. When he has the open, that's when he unloads. The best boxers in the world is when they Floyd Mayweather, he only throws his power when he knows the opening's there. If he's going to hit a grazing punch, he's not going to put the power. And that's something that Shahbazyan and other guys, you learn as you get more experience. Let's do some matchmaking before we've gone way too long in this main event. But guys, honestly, after the main event, maybe the co-main event, there's not the sexiest card. Let's do some matchmaking. We'll start with Derek Brunson. Who would you like to see him? He's on a 3-fight winning streak right now, using his wrestling. Who would you like to see?
With Brunson, the problem is they're the guys that are kind of in the same place in the division that he is. He's already fought. He's fought Ian Heinisch. He's fought Uriah Hall. He either needs a step up. I know that I know that Darren Till just lost, but I wouldn't mind seeing that fight. Cannonier and Whitaker are now fighting, apparently. Jack Hermanson is sitting out there. I know he called somebody out after his win over Gastelum, but
yeah, he called Whitaker and he didn't get it.
That's right.
He called at that time. He called the winner of Whitaker and Till, which obviously ended up being Whitaker. He didn't get what he wanted.
I think Hermanson would be a solid fight for both of them.
Yeah, I'm definitely okay. When you think about the line of the middleweight right now, you have Costa fighting for the title. After him, it looks like it'll be Cannonier, Whitaker winner. Dana White kind of said that, especially if Cannonier wins. How could you deny him at that point? And Hermanson Brunson, that works for me. It's a new matchup. They haven't faced each other. It definitely would be a matchup where I think Brunson would want it more than Hermanson because it would do more. A win for Brunson over Hermanson would definitely solidify him in that title contention, where Hermanson would just kind of feel like another win. The other matchup the matchup I wrote down, it is kind of like that, just eliminating the logjam a little bit, because you got to have a long line. So some of these guys have to pick each other off, and that would be the Romero Uriah Hall. I know he's faced those guys, but it's been a long time. I would be very intrigued with Yoel Romero, because remember, he was beating Yoel Romero deep into the third round when I think he was knocked out. I would like that matchup. So I would match him with the winner of Hall versus Romero, but I like the Jack Hermanson one. So I'm good with either one. So we'll call that matchup, the Hermanson matchup, if that makes. We'll call that Shillan and Duffy approved. Shillan and Duffy show approved. Let's move on to Shahbazyan. He could get matched with a name still. He's still going to be probably in the middleweight rankings, or he can kind of take a long road. I'm going to take the long road approach, where I'd rather have him drop down, go against guys outside the top 15. The two names that I really thought of, the first one I thought is Brandon Allen. He's a guy who's been on a winning streak in the UFC. I know Brandon Allen's injured. He might be out for a while. So if he can't do that matchup, maybe Marvin Torrey is another guy that's been intriguing, kind of on the winning streak. Guys are outside the top 15. I would rather see him face a guy like that, prove that he's on a level above those guys, and then slowly make a descent. Don't rush this guy. Who would you like? If you're matchmaking, who would you put Shahbazyan against?
Well, obviously he just lost to Brunson, but he also, before that, just destroyed Brad Tavares and Jack Marshman, so you can't drop him below the level of those guys. Somebody that I know is definitely looking for a fight as soon as he gets a little bit better is Gerald Meerschaert. You don't think that's below those guys? I see Meerschaert as below Brad Tavares. I see Brad Tavares even with Brandon Allen, Marvin Torrey, with those two guys that I mentioned, a little more intrigue. They're more intriguing than Brad Tavares, but skill set on that level. I see Meerschaert below that. I see a loss to Meerschaert. A win does a lot for Shahbazyan because he beats a veteran, a guy with a lot more experience. But a loss cripples you because you should win that. You're going to enter as a huge favorite. I would be fine with Brandon Allen. I don't think they should make Marvin Vettori fight him. I think Vettori is kind of on his own arc towards getting into contention on his own. I'd hate to run him into Shahbazyan and either give Shahbazyan another ugly loss or derail Vettori when he's already in a pretty good spot. I mean, he's beaten 3 people in a row who are better, I would argue, than anyone that Shahbazyan has beaten. So let him kind of keep doing what he's going to do.
Do you have Vettori ahead of him right now? And not saying like who's better, but like where their careers are. You have him like okay.
If you had me like write out my middleweight top 50,
you'd have him.
Vettori would be ahead of Shahbazyan, and he would have been before tonight.
And that's
like Vettori's got.
Yeah, and that's based off of not skills, who you think you'd win, just based on straight rankings, what they've already accomplished. Vettori's beaten better people. He lost a close decision to Israel Adesanya. I mean, you can argue that he's given Adesanya a tougher fight than anybody else in his career. All right, so we've gone different routes. Let's see who the UFC does. The UFC will probably do neither of those matchups go with like a big, like they'll probably put him against like Kelvin freaking Gastelum for Pete's sake. I hope not. Let's move on to the honestly, if he beat Brunson, I didn't hate that matchup just because of how many people are ahead of him, and like just for the name recognition, like you want to build a star, put him against Anderson Silva. But you can't get Anderson Silva if you lose to Derek Brunson. The co-main event. Speaking of building a star, Joanne Jojo Calderwood was in line to fight for the UFC flyweight title. Due to COVID and some injuries and whatnot, that was put on hold. She took a risk by giving up her title shot, fighting on short notice to take on, replacing Viviane Araújo to take on Jennifer Maia, and it did not pay off as she was submitted in the first round by armbar by the former Invicta standout. First thing I got to say is it was not a good, like it wasn't just Calderwood. To me, had like 5 seconds of offense, and that was like a cheap kind of catching. I think she might have caught a leg takedown. She was getting pieced up on the feet, and then she was fighting off submissions for a while until she was submitted. The first thing I thought of is if Jennifer Maia did that to her, could you imagine what Valentina Shevchenko would have done to her?
Absolutely.
Let's talk about what happened. To me, Joanne Calderwood she fights in 2 ranges, and this is what I like about her. Now, I picked Jennifer Maia in this matchup, so pat my back on. It's been a long time, I feel like, since I've been able to pick a underdog correctly that I've picked, and I've been throwing a lot of them, kind of throwing them against the wall to see what's sticking, and finally one stuck. Joanne Calderwood she fights in 2 ranges, to me, that she does well, all the way out with her long-range kicking, which she kind of uses to back the fighter up, and she follows those kicks into the next range she likes, and that's all the way in, where she gets in a clinch, throws a lot of elbows, kind of fights a lot of volume, and kind of forces the fighter onto their back foot. She never had that opportunity. Maia came out, guns blazing, bull in a china shop. She came out aggressive. She was landing hard shots. And that's to me, this is exactly how you fight Joanne Calderwood. Like, everyone needs to look at and not everyone can follow this. But there are fighters who are not as explosive, not as brutally strong as Jennifer Maia, but they have enough of a skill set where I think they could do this. Like, the first girl that I thought of in the division that Jessica Andrade absolutely could. Like, Jessica Andrade come into the division, Jessica Andrade could do this. Another one I think that probably could right now is Lauren Murphy. Like, I think Lauren Murphy could use this strategy. Yeah, so I don't know why I'm saying this. I was blown away with Jennifer Maia's performance. Did Jennifer Maia do enough to get a title shot?
Yes, she did, and it appears to be if the immediate congratulatory and accepting tweet from Shevchenko is any indicator, it looks like it's probably going to happen.
Yeah. So to me, there's 3 candidates. I saw someone throwing out another person. The 3 candidates is Maia, who's on a 1-fight winning streak right now. So, I mean, but she's won 3 out of 4. Lauren Murphy's been on this like little short winning streak, and Cynthia Calvillo came up and beat Jessica Eye, so she's someone interested. She's actually the highest ranked person to not fight in the UFC rankings, not in the Sherdog rankings. but she's the highest ranked fighter to not face Valentina Shevchenko. This is what happens when you have such a dominant champion in a shallow division, but two, when you're such a dominant champion, you make it look shallow. Like I call it the Demetrius Johnson effect. Like it looks so much worse when you're just so much better than the field. And sometimes we evaluate the field wrong, where we look at the field and be like, well, the field's not that good. It's like, no, the champion is just amazing. We need to give them credit. So of those three people, the other name people said they're throwing out if Jessica Andrade beats Jessica I. That's a former strawweight champion. She beat Jessica I, who fought for the title. If we just limit those four, maybe there's somebody else I'm not thinking of. You would go with Maya next for Shevchenko.
I would go with Maya. Yeah, she's not on any kind of long winning streak, but at the same time, like, nobody really is in that division. Like, Calderwood is tied with Shevchenko for the most wins at flyweight with 4. Like, nobody can be on a long winning streak in that division. It's all people who are coming from another division. Calvillo and Andrade are both coming from strawweight. So it doesn't even count against Maya that much that, she hasn't strung a bunch of wins together. And stylistically, nobody's going to be favored against Shevchenko, obviously.
Not even close.
But Maya has some things of interest.
She's the hardest hitter. The best jiu-jitsu game. Oh, maybe not better than Calvillo, but pretty. Maybe better than Calvillo.
But if Calderwood had won, or if she had just waited for her title shot, I can't think of somebody in the division, like at least in the top 10, that would have had a worse time stylistically beating Shevchenko.
Yeah. I mean, none of them have. Aaron Bronstetter just tweeted out, and he was talking about the options and this and that. And I tweeted out, like, put all 4 of them in, like, give each of them, like, one round 1, a different girl round 2, a different girl round 3, different girl round 4. And I said, and then round 5, put all of them in and throw in, like, an alligator or a warthog or a mountain lion. I forgot who I said, but, like, throw that in there and see. Then it'd be kind of even. Shevchenko is going to be favored against no matter who she faces. Like, and when we say favorite, I'm not talking about 3-1. I'm talking like 8-1. Like, she's going to be a negative 800, maybe higher favorite. I don't feel less intrigued than I did about Joanne Calderwood. Like, nobody was anybody excited that Joanne Calderwood was going to challenge for the title?
Nope, I don't think so.
So, I would probably go with Maya too, because I mean, of the 3 girls, let's put Jessica Andrade to the side because she hasn't even fought in the division yet. But I mean, I know she did in the past, but no, she didn't. She was a bantamweight. Nope. Yeah, she actually she was when she dropped down. I don't think flyweight was there yet. I just you always like forget that she dropped down from bantamweight. Andrade is the most intriguing one, but I still think that's a terrible stylistic matchup against Shevchenko. But of the 3, Lauren Murphy, Cynthia Calvillo, and Jennifer Maia, Calvillo is the most marketable one, which is why I want her to sit on the sidelines, get another win, get a little more intrigue. That's why I'm okay with either Jennifer Maia or Lauren Murphy. Jennifer Maia got the best win of the 2 of them. Just like sometimes the one, like people like to say the most name recognized. Sometimes the most name recognized is not the person you should choose. Like, you're gonna eventually, you can't keep avoiding these ones that aren't intriguing. So just get them over with. Let's get it over with. Like, that's I felt like some matchups with John Jones versus Jan Blachowicz. Just get it over with. And then you go back to the Santos fight, the Reyes fight, the heavyweight run. But get this fight over with. That's why I felt we need, like, Anthony Smith fought John Jones. Like,
sure.
Let's talk about Joanne Calderwood. She obviously took a chance. We don't know why she took a chance. It could have been she just wanted to be more active. But when fighters get paid what they do, they don't have the luxury to sit out. Like, right now, I'm a Patriots fan. Obviously, I'm from New England. And, like, it seems like the entire Patriots team is not playing this year. Like, every single hour I get a new ESPN update that so-and-so is sitting out the season. When you're an NFL player, you have that luxury. When you have millions sitting in the bank, Joanne Calderwood doesn't have millions. I think it was just, and I don't know her. Obviously, I don't know her financial situation. I think she just needs the money. Like,
Well, we don't know her financial situation, but she is somebody who has explicitly said that like she was gutted because she didn't get a post-fight bonus because somebody had a better performance than her like later that same night. You know, like clearly she's not swimming in it. So yeah, she took the fight. She took the chance. You and I both picked her to lose. We both thought, this was not the best stay busy fight. Now she's in a tough spot, man. Like she's in that area where you look at the people around her in the rankings. She's best buddies and teammates with Roxanne Modafferi, so that's not happening. Already fought Andrea Lee, that's not happening. She could fight Molly McCann, put them on a UK card.
Yeah, the thing about Calderwood, which is always gonna be a hard problem, when you're a high volume fighter, but you don't hit hard, and you cut easily, it's like you're never gonna you're gonna have a hard time going on a run. The good thing about it, you get one win, as in the case of the girls we're talking about 3 girls. I think Lauren Murphy's on. Yeah, she's on like 3. She's actually on a winning streak, but. Jennifer Maia, Cynthia Calveo, and we're talking about Jessica Andrade, who's lost her last 2 fights, and hasn't even fought in the division. When those are your top candidates, that Caldwell is not that far out. Matchmaking's going to be tough, so let's do that with her because she took a chance. I'm going way down. I'm going out of the rankings or way down the UFC rankings. I'm going with the winner of Montana De La Rosa versus Marina Moroz. My thinking is what you said. She's fought everybody.
I mean, Moroz already beat her pretty good.
Yeah, she submitted her in the first round. That was when Caldwell was in that really weird state where I think she had I think she was still training in Europe then, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was still with.
She had a breakup with her boyfriend.
Who was at her gym. Like, that was back when she was still at Dinky Ninjas in Glasgow. So, yeah.
I mean, that was a long time ago, too.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think Montana De La Rosa might win that matchup. So that's the more intriguing. I don't know. Who would you go with, Cole? I mean, it's hard. It's hard finding an opponent that kind of makes sense. She's on the lost decline.
Seriously, she and McCann each lost their last fight within a few weeks of each other. I like her and Molly McCann.
Okay, so you went with Molly McCann. All right, let's move on. We only have 6 more fights. We're gonna breeze through these prelims. Vicente Luque won against Randy Brown. Vicente Luque won by second round TKO with very slick knockout. It was right at the end of the round. He had a front headlock. Randy Brown was reaching to put his hands down, and when he lifted his hands up, or actually it might have been looked like Luque lifted his hands up, he landed a knee and knocked him out cold. Questioning Randy Brown's chin once again. I picked Randy Brown in an upset because I'm an idiot. I saw a strategy and it bothered me, and I saw a way that I think Randy Brown could have won, and that was simply be fat. I feel like Vicente Luque, between the damage he's taken, I think he's slowing down. I just feel like every time I watch him fight, I feel like he's playing with house money. Like I'm waiting for the wheels to fall off on this guy, and I expect it to happen any time now. And I thought Randy Brown could use his length, play a stick and move game, use lateral movement like he did. Was it Barberino fight? And he didn't do that. He did the complete opposite by engaging in a mid-range striking battle, which is the reason why Vicente Luque's pressure countering game and those chopping leg kicks are so effective. If you move, they can't leg kick you as much. If you're sticking and moving, you're dictating where the fight takes place. It's gonna be they're gonna have a hard time leg kicking you. No, stand in mid range, right in kicking range, and get kicked. And then when you get kicked so much, you lose your mobility now, and you can't go with the game that you should have from the very beginning. Good win from. If you stand in front of Vicente Luque, you play his game. There's a reason why he was on such a nice run in the UFC, because he's good at his game, and very few people's going to win a rock'em sock'em battle with Vicente Luque. What else do you have to say about the fight? I know I talked way too long. I'm sorry. I'm just ranting because I'm mad I picked Randy Brown.
No, you said it all perfectly. I did have Luque in this one just because. Well, I was right on this one in the same way I was wrong in the main event, because there were ways that Brown could have won, but I did not trust him to follow that pattern. I happened to be right this time when I was wrong about Brunson versus Shahbazyan. But that's it. Luque is just he has one of the most quietly good records and resumes in the welterweight division, as befits someone who goes by the nickname the Silent Assassin. You are mute.
Sorry, this will be the last matchmaking we do because I just love the welterweight division. I say it every week, and anybody who's even close to those rankings, I'm intrigued because you can't make a bad matchup at welterweight. Vicente Luque called out Nate Diaz during the post. He's not going to get that, and he's not getting Nate Diaz. He even said it, I know you want big fights, but I'm ahead of you in the ranking. Nate Diaz don't give a shit about rankings. Nate Diaz has no idea who Vicente Luque is. He probably thinks that's his name of his marijuana dealer. Who would you realistically match up Vicente Luque with?
Realistically, he has done enough that he deserves somebody ahead of him in the rankings. That's just it, flat out.
Okay.
You can't match this guy laterally anymore. He's taken on lower ranked fighters just because of short notice things, he fought Derek Krantz, just because he needed someone at the last minute. At this point, if Damian Maia is game, I like that. Even though he's ranked quite a bit higher, he's coming off losses. I like Tyron Woodley, Michael Chiesa. These are the type of fights that Luque should get. They can't just keep matching him up with those 11 through 20 guys until he drops another fight. That's just ridiculously unfair. There's outside of the top 5 or so, there's nobody who's been better over their last 10 fights in the welterweight division than Luque. Luque he definitely lost the Stephen Thompson fight, but it's not like he was just whooped from pillar to post, and everyone else he's just destroyed.
Yeah.
Everyone who fights Vicente Luque ends up looking like they were run over by a truck.
Yeah, that's true. So, and you can't just give him that action fighter that's not ranked because it's just going to be
Mike Perry.
Yeah, Mike Perry or Nico Prices or the fight's going to be incredible. So let's just put them together. I agree with you. He deserves higher. So I'm looking at the Sherdog rankings, which both of us contribute. Obviously, he's not getting the title shot against Kamaru Usman. He's number 1. Colby Covington, Gilbert Burns, Jorge Masvidal, Leon Edwards. He's not getting any of those guys. So let's move on. Tyron Woodley is the next highest ranked.
He's teammates with 2 of them. So.
Oh yeah, that's true too. Tyron Woodley is the next highest ranked. I definitely think that makes sense considering Tyron Woodley has lost twice. I don't think Tyron Woodley takes that matchup. Douglas Lima is 7th. Obviously, he's not going to Bellator. Michael Chiesa is coming off that win against RDA, and that's such a big name for him. I don't think he takes that matchup. And the reason why I'm going down these rankings, this is what I did earlier, because I agree with you. I agree that he deserves a ranked guy, which leaves RDA next. That's why I like that matchup, because a guy that's a former champion, it would definitely be the biggest win of Luque's career. It would be a fun fight. Say what you want about RDA. You can draw him into a fight that he shouldn't do, and that's to stand and bang, in the pocket.
That's how he lost his belt.
That's exactly how he lost his belt. I think that would be fun based on the trajectory. I always try to think of, when I think about a younger, and it's weird to call Vicente Luque because he's not a prospect or anything, but a guy who's newer to that level. I always think about a mountain. Someone's climbing up the mountain, someone's climbing down the mountain. They're going to meet. If they're on the same path, they're going to meet somewhere, and I think that's the guy. I also do another name if they don't do a top 10 matchup, and just because this guy's been we've been waiting forever for this guy to return, and I think it'd be a fun fight against Santiago Ponzinibbio. Now, he's not in our rankings, and that probably is due to inactivity. But if Ponzinibbio is back around, I like that matchup. Let's go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that's fine with me as well.
But I would go with RDA. You went with Tyron Woodley, is that what you said, or Michael Chiesa?
Or Damian Maia.
Oh, Damian Maia. Yeah, if Damian Maia is on that retirement tour like that, Damian Maia could win that fight because of his style, but I feel like Damian Maia has one matchup. Like, give him that Diego matchup. Give him the favorable. Like, if anybody deserves a win in Brazil on your way out, like, doesn't Damian Maia deserve served on the platter for him?
Yes.
Plus, like, no one wants to see him, like, if he can't take down Vicente Luque, does anybody? I mean, obviously you picked this, so you must like it. Like, I don't want to see Damian Maia get beat up. Speaking of enjoying people get beat up, Bobby Green and Lando Venata, they came off a fight of the year candidate from 3 years ago. And this was not a fight of the year, but it was a fantastic matchup. I could watch these guys. They just fight 1,000 times. They just match up great. This one was another one. Bobby Green beat Lando Venata by unanimous decision. In the post-fight press conference, he said if you get a draw and you win the second one, that means you get a win in both of them. So Jay Petrie, I don't know if you knew that. So Jay Petrie, you got to go through the SureDog Fight Finder and find out any of those rematches of draws and correct them.
So Crow Cop is now 2-0 against Vanderlei Silva.
There you go.
All right.
Bobby Green is bad Jorge Masvidal. And what I mean by that is like the Jorge Masvidal that lost close decisions. Bobby Green's he's got great head movement. When he uses head movement and throws, he's got good like positioning. Like he keeps himself in good position to land shots. He just doesn't throw enough. And when he does throw, he hurt Lando Venata. Like I just think if he had more aggression, more what's the word I'm looking for? More
urgency.
Urgency, yes. Like throw, like you slip a punch to throw, not to slip and just show off. Like he has that bad Jorge Masvidal. But he's on. I think he's a 3-fight winning streak now in the UFC.
It's just 2. He beat Guida and Venata. Yeah.
Oh, all right. 2. I mean, he's on 2. I mean, Bobby Green. It's been a while since Bobby Green's been on a winning streak. So, what do you have to think about this fight?
I enjoyed it. It is honestly, it feels weird to say because he still did Bobby Green things like talking too much and throwing like single strikes instead of combinations. But that's his best performance in a long time. He won all 3 rounds. I felt as though he won each round in increasingly more convincing fashion.
Yeah.
Like none of them were a 10-8, but it went from this was a close round to Bobby Green is starting to, pile it up here. It was a good performance. He had a little more urgency. His strengths are still very much in evidence. I mean, the hand speed, just the ability to just come up from his waist and just zap a man in the face with a straight punch with either hand, either the jab or the straight from the power side, just anytime he wanted. It was there for him anytime he wanted. He was willing to take the takedown when it was there for him.
Yeah.
Because he's like bad Jorge Masvidal in that way. He's like slightly worse Michael Johnson in that other way, where he's a much better takedown artist than he lets on.
Sure.
Just because he'd rather stand there and admire his own boxing.
Yeah.
So, pretty good performance for him. And even though it feels like he's been around forever, he had some really bad losses early on. He also has some good wins.
He does.
He's only 33.
Yeah, he just seems like he should be. So he said something in the post-press conference. He said he should be on a 7-fight winning streak. And then I look, and he's 3-3-1 over his last 7, going all the way back just after his knockout loss to Dustin Poirier, where he famously started talking trash, and while he's talking trash, Dustin Poirier knocks him out. But of those 7, he has a split decision loss to Rashid Magomedov. Yeah, he got a unanimous decision loss to Drakkar Klose, and a unanimous decision loss to Francisco Trinaldo. I don't really recall the Francisco Trinaldo fight that much, but I remember the Drakkar Klose fight and been like, Bobby Green might have won that fight. And obviously the Lando Venata had that split decision draw. I don't remember the Trinaldo fight that well. Maybe you do, and that actually it's funny. I should remember that.
Our scorers gave it to Green.
Okay, so we'll go by the SureDog scores. Who were the shout about?
Jay, Mike, Sloan, and Tyler.
All right, so 3 fantastic guys. He actually could be on a 7-fight winning streak in the UFC.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if one judge changed a little, and if he just threw, and honestly, if he threw more punches, he probably would be.
And that's the other thing. When Green says that, I think he means a little bit of both. Like, he's, for as weirdly cocky a guy he is while he's actually fighting, he's pretty honest in self-examination when he's just on the mic. So when I think when he says I should be on a 7-fight winning streak, he also means I should have done more in some of those fights, and it wouldn't even have been a question.
Yeah, he's his own worst enemy, as Courtney Casey was like her own worst enemy, and the close losses. Jorge Masvidal, same thing.
And 5 years ago, did you ever think Masvidal was going to be where he is now, or did you think he was going to put on 3 great performances, then lose a shitty split decision,
right.
like kind of in that pattern forever?
Yeah. So what you're saying is Courtney Casey is going to be the baddest woman ever, and headline pay-per-views soon. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly correct.
All right. I got to, sometimes you guys don't understand. I got to translate what Ben means. Before that, Frankie Saenz versus Jonathan Martinez. Jonathan Martinez wins brutal knockout, 3rd round TKO. This is not fun. Jonathan Martinez, he weighed in 4 pounds overweight. Frankie Saenz shouldn't have taken the fight because Jonathan Martinez beat him senseless. Frankie Saenz, he's older. He's getting very slow. To win, he needs to win a brawl or a lot of slow output clinch fight. Jonathan Martinez was not doing that. He was just beating to the punch, hitting him with everything he threw. I thought the corner should threw the towel in. They never do. They never throw the towel in. I don't know why I say it on the show all the time, but this guy's not winning a title anytime soon. He's nowhere he's not losing a lot if you throw the towel in. He about midway through the second, he's almost got knocked out many times, visibly hurt. Just throw the towel in. This guy was done.
Yep, 39 years old, taking on a 26-year-old who would have looked a weight class bigger than him, even if he actually wasn't almost half a weight class bigger than him. Martinez, I don't know if he's a future contender, but he is definitely of the next generation of bantamweights.
Yeah,
and the difference in power and speed, it was ugly.
Yeah, I'm not high on Jonathan Martinez, but this is not the guy that had an ugly fight against Andre Sukmatot. He's definitely has improved. It's just he fought Frankie Saenz, who's kind of been on his way out. But yeah, Jonathan Martinez looked better. I mean, he lost the split decision to Andre Ewell, which is a pretty good fight at this point. This is what you should do to Frankie Saenz. So good win for Jonathan Martinez. Before that, we had 2 debuting fighters. It was Nate Manaz versus Johnny Munoz. Munoz took the fight on 2 days' notice or days' notice, replacing Ray Borg. This is the score cards that were all over the place because there was tons of groin strikes. Munoz hit Manaz in the groin 3 times. All accidental, but obviously after 3, you got to take a point. There was a point taken. I scored the fight 28-28. I gave Munoz the first round. The 3rd round had to take a point deduction in the 3rd round, and that's how I scored at 28-28. But when I looked at MMA decisions, there was MMA media score this all kinds of ways. So how did you score the fight?
I scored the fight 29-27 for Munoz. I gave him the first and second round. I thought he lost the 3rd and then lost the point. Sorry.
No, you gave him all 3 rounds if it was 29-27.
No, sorry. 28. I gave him a 10-8 first.
Oh, okay.
And then the second, and then I thought he lost the 3rd and lost the point there. So I had a 29-26. Sorry.
Okay.
I still think I'm wrong there.
I think you are.
My brain is completely
29-27.
Right,
I think that would be. So you gave him a 10. You gave him the first and the second.
Yes. So
okay,
that's
so
19.
that's 28. So he hit with and then an 8-point round. So it'd be 28. right?
Yes.
28-28.
But then that meant the last round was
No, he'd be up
10-8.
one. He'd be up a point. Yeah, because 10-8 both ways, and then he won the second round. So you would have had him 28-27.
Yeah, 28-27. Thank you.
Whatever. So you had him winning. I had it a draw. I almost gave it a 10-8 round, but I want to put a pin on that because I want to talk about something when we get to the first fight. I think we're going to spend a little more time on that fight than we probably should. Munoz, even though he lost, neither one of us thought he lost. I thought worst case scenario was a draw. When he got the takedown in the first, he looked fantastic on the ground. And this is a guy that I kept saying in the first and second round, if he gets the fight longer than 1 day's notice, he might have finished him. I don't want to use excuses. I'm sure he was in shape training, but even though he got the loss, I feel much better about Johnny Munoz going forward than I do Nate Manaz. Like the only thing I got from Nate Manaz, like he's got pretty good takedown defense. Like there was nothing else that like stood out to me.
And he was much bigger.
Much bigger. Yeah, it looked like there was like at least a full weight class difference. Anything else you want to say about this fight before we move on?
No, other than I'm definitely excited to see Munoz back down at bantamweight and in the UFC, because normally when someone comes out of King of the Cage, which the only place he's fought and he's like 10-0, you don't know what you're getting. So I did not expect that much out of him, but I was very impressed by his ground game.
Before that, we had Jamal Emmers take on Vince Cachoeira. Cachoeira replaced Timur Valiev on like 2 days' notice. Absolute utter dominance by Jamal Emmers. He won all three. I think some people threw in some 10-8 rounds there. I'm not sure if they did, but it was like a shooting gallery. Like Cachoeira was just getting hit with everything Emmers did. It got to the point to me where it looked like Emmers was just like, all right, I'm gonna try stuff. Like I'm gonna try a like combination to a double. I'm gonna try when I get on top, I'm gonna try like this kind of pass. Like it just, I'm way better than this guy. I can do whatever I want. He is no threat to me. Cachoeira is very, very tough. And obviously, it's his UFC debut against a prospect that a lot of people like in Emmers, and you take it on short notice. What I didn't like about Cachoeira is like, dude, you keep doing the same thing. It's not working. Like, do something different. Like, even if you're not good at it, like, try flying knee, try spinning back fist, try to close the distance, try to go for takedowns. Like, do something different. Don't just throw the same combination and just get pieced up. But Cachoeira is a guy that he's lost like 3 of his last 4 fights. He probably only got in the UFC because he was in the right place, right time. What did you think of this fight?
It looked like Emmers doing exactly what a prospect as good as him should do. I mean, we're talking about a guy who a few months ago fought Giga Chikadze, who is the UFC shiny new thing at 145 pounds, just to a complete standstill. It was a split decision. A lot of people whose opinions I respect gave the fight to Emmers. Like I actually gave it to Chikadze, but he was neck and neck with him. So this is what he's supposed to do to a short notice opponent. Just you're right. It was a shooting gallery. Like everything he wanted to throw landed. He was definitely kind of experimenting with different things later on, which that's fine with me. You know, even with over 20 fights in your career, get in those reps.
And the first fight of the night, to just how you should start off weirdness. Just a weird night and a weird couple weeks for this card. Chris Gutierrez took on Cody Durden. Cody Durden replaced Luke Sanders. I think he had just about a week's or a little bit over a week's notice. And they went to unanimous draw. It seemed like pretty much everybody in media was okay with that, except for me. I actually still scored it for Gutierrez. I scored it 29-28. I did not. Apparently I'm the only guy who did not. I did not give Cody Durden a 10-8 first round. We'll get to that in a second. To me, this was just a guy. One guy was much better at striking. The other guy was much better at wrestling. But the striker, to me, was able to do it for 2 rounds. The wrestler could not sustain his wrestling advantage for 3 rounds. And Gutierrez, to me, he was too concerned with the wrestling because he was really taking over in second, third, but he was just touching him. Like we were talking about Edmund Shahbazyan like throwing power instead of touching at moments. Like Gutierrez did the opposite. He was just touching him, and then like, all right, dude, start unloading. Like you're landing everything. Like you have your openings, hit them. Like sit down and hit on your punch and crack them. And he didn't do that enough. It's not pride scoring, but if this is pride scoring, Gutierrez wins because the last 10 minutes was all him. So, all right, how did you score it?
I did score it a draw. I did give Durden the first round 10-8. Just, I mean, he was on the guy's back for 4 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
He had him. Neither of the rear naked chokes was especially close, but he basically just turned him into face cranks that looked painful as hell. He had him completely flattened out, eating punches at one point. I gave it a 10-8, and on reconsideration, I still feel good about that. So for me, it was a draw, just by the way we score fights.
Yeah, I'm in a really minority in this one. My issue is this: like, I don't like going for neck crank. Like, I never thought he was in trouble. I thought like the punches he got was like the very end of the round, like wasn't anything significant. And like he obviously clearly won, and I considered a 10-8 round. But I hate this. I hate when, and I don't have an issue with anybody scored a 10-8 round. If you say like he utterly dominated and all the offense was one-sided. And that's why people are giving it a 10-8 round. Like, okay, this guy had all the offense, this guy had no offense. Okay, I understand that you want to give it a 10-8 round. But then don't watch Jamal Amers absolutely trash Vince Cachoeira and don't give him hit any 10-8 rounds. You going to tell me because Cachoeira had little moments where he landed a little bit of strikes that those rounds for Emmers weren't as dominant, if not more dominant, than what Durden did to Gutierrez in the first round? Like, I just want you to be consistent. You know what I mean? Like, and when I'm saying you, I'm not saying you, Ben Duffy. I'm saying you universal to all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, I would say the third round of Gutierrez was just as dominant as the first round for Durden. Like, he dropped him a couple times, almost ended him. Like, you know, they were like kind of like, dude, go for the kill. You might end this. I think about it like this. Like, I think about like a baseball game where, like, okay, you put up 4 rounds, the other team put up 0, so you shut them out, and you definitely had a clearly very good inning. But if the second inning, my team scores 10 runs and you score 1 run, like, but MMA fans won't give that a 10-8 round. Well, I scored 9 more runs than your team did, but because your team scored 4-0 in the first round, that's a 10-8 round, but mine isn't. Like, just because you like, if you got a takedown, and it can't be a 10-8 round because he got a takedown over. Like, I was listening to Paul Felder. He said at the very end of the round, he like, I don't know if you remember, he reversed it, and they're like, well, if he reversed it like 10 seconds earlier, it wouldn't have been a 10-8 round. Like, so if he was on top for 10 seconds instead of 1 second, or it goes from a 10-8 round to 10-9, I'm like, what? I don't know. That's just me ranting. It's just scoring. But I'm in the minority, so tell me how I'm an idiot. Everyone get on me on Twitter and tell me how I'm an idiot. And that was a good draw. Anyway, anything else you gotta say? I'm sorry. It's very late at night, and Ben's like, dude, why are you ranting about the opening prelim fight that nobody cares about?
I'm here for it, and it's an hour earlier for me than for you, so I'm not tired. I mean.
All right, guys, we covered all 8 fights. We actually went more in depth. I was sitting there, I was like, what the hell are we going to talk about? But somehow we always found a way to fill the time. Let's get to the Bulls. Oh, what do you want to do? The cut list? Or you want to do Bulls or Bears?
We can do the cut list.
All right. You have any? I'm assuming we have the same person. Do you have any nominees?
I think Frankie Saenz could go.
I think it's
like, not because he's terrible, but just because it might be time to consider hanging him up. His last 2 fights. Agree. Martinez crushed him, and for the record, I think Martinez, even if he'd made weight, probably would have crushed him. And Martinez is not even close to a top 15 or 20 guy in that division. Marlon Vera is. That was Saenz's previous opponent, and he crushed him too. So if Saenz wants to hang around for a couple more paychecks, those aren't very big paychecks for the type of punishment he's taking.
Yeah, I'm looking at him. He's lost 5 out of his last 7. He's lost 2 in a row. I mean, like you said, he's 39 years old. I agree. Like, he needs to be cut, but more than anything, I agree. He needs to retire. Like, I don't want him to go to bare knuckle boxing. Like, I don't want him to sign with Bellator or be fighting at a Mohegan Sun on the prelims. They try to get over like one of their rising bantamweight or prospect. Like who's a bantamweight prospect in Bellator? Let me think. Or even like a guy who lost recently, like a Ricky Bendejas. Like I don't want to see Frankie Saenz get beat up by Ricky Bendejas anymore on a like loaded Bellator prelim card or whatever. Like just retire, dude. Like it's please don't do bare knuckle boxing. Anybody else? You have anybody else to cut? That's all I had. And you have anybody else?
That's it for me.
All right, so it's official. Shillan and Duffy give the approval for the UFC to cut Frankie Saenz. Let's get to the Bulls or the Bears. This is it's a stock market reference where when a stock is going up, it is a bull stock, meaning good. If a stock's going down, it is a bear stock. It is going down. Do you want to do the Bulls or the Bears first?
Oh, let's do the Bears.
All right, so Bears, we're going to do negative. You can pick as much as 3. How many do you have?
I have 2.
2. All right, so let's do number 2 and then number 1. The worst loser last. So let's go with this is your runner-up for loser.
Okay, runner-up for loser is undefeated fighters. 2 previously undefeated fighters took their first L tonight. It was just not a good night to go in there with the bright shiny record.
So that was Edmund Shahbazyan.
Shahbazyan lost, and so did Johnny Munoz Jr.
But we both thought he won.
Yeah. Hey, MMA is a cruel and harsh mistress. In both cases, this is not, curtains for them.
No,
they
absolutely
have
not.
futures ahead of them. I'm excited to see both of their next fights. Hopefully both in the UFC. Hopefully Munoz gets another shot. But yeah, just bad night to bring that bright, shiny, clean record into the cage.
Yeah, I'm assuming Munoz would get another shot, being that he took this fight at really short notice. Could have possibly won. It was an entertaining fight, and actually, like I said, I was more intrigued by him than the other fighter he took on. Who is your number 1 loser for the evening?
My number 1 loser for the evening, and I feel terrible saying this because it is hard to think of a just much more likable personality in the sport, would be Joanne Calderwood.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel as though about an hour before UFC Fight Night 173 started is about as close as Joanne Calderwood ever got to a UFC title shot.
Yeah, I feel if she goes on any kind of run, she'll jump the line because the UFC will know she gave up this opportunity to help fill a meaningless card. They can't. So, but I totally agree. It's definitely a possibility that she might never get a title shot. I'll go with my Bears. My number 3 Bear. I knew you were going to pick Joanne, so she didn't make my list. My number 3 Bear is a guy that I actually scored a win for, but he did not win. He got a draw, and that was Chris Gutierrez. I mean, this guy was on a 3-fight winning streak. He looked fantastic in his fight before. Takes on Durden, a guy that not many people were high on. He didn't have a lot of hype. Guy took the fight on a week's notice and got a draw. It should have been an easy win for Chris. Not an easy win, but should have been a win for Gutierrez. My number 2, it's got to be Edmund Shahbazyan. Neither one of us are jumping off the bandwagon, but you got to take an early loss. A lot of guys, when they get an early loss, they don't know how to respond to that, and they go completely the other way. I hope that's not the case with Shahbazyan. I am. Maybe because he's loyal to Edmund Shahbazyan, and that bothers a lot of people, and his connection to Ronda Rousey, which a lot of people hate Ronda Rousey. I'm rooting for the guy just for those reasons.
I don't hate Ronda Rousey, but she is the ultimate example of not being able to respond to your first loss in a productive way.
Exactly. Yeah, don't go to her for advice. Please, yeah, Ronda, please don't give me advice unless all your advice is gonna be don't do what I did. And my number 1 Bear, and I'm gonna say this event, and I'll say what You had record for canceled fights. You had record for nut shots. The commentating team was counting. It was like 11. There was tons of decisions. I think there was they closed up good, but there was 5 or 6 decisions. There was a draw. Just this event seemed cursed to me. Let's go on to the bulls. Who do you have for? And how many bulls do you have?
I have 2 bulls.
All right, so give me your number 2 first.
Vicente Luque.
Okay.
If you were a fan of Vicente Luque, and I definitely like Vicente, what you want out of this guy is for him to string enough wins together to actually get into the title picture without diluting the essence of what makes him awesome. It's so rare that guys that are just this blood and guts actually get up into the upper reaches of a division. It's kind of rare that you get a Robbie Lawler, Matt Brown type that actually gets close to the title picture or gets a title without ever diluting what makes them awesome. He put away Randy Brown with an underratedly brutal finish. That knee, was just nasty because he basically was holding his head in place on the ground while keeping him from being able to put his fingertips down and just crushed him. So a fantastic performance for Mr. Luque, and we've already been over it before, but certainly I am rooting for him to keep doing this because he has a style I want to see more of in the octagon.
All right, and who's your number 1 winner?
Fighters making incremental improvements and retooling their game. We had both Derek Brunson and Bobby Green pull it out tonight,
good call.
And they are 2 guys that won, in spite of the things that seem to be the big flaws in their game just a couple years ago. In the case of Brunson, it seems like he may actually have turned a corner and he may be ready to make a title run in his late 30s. In Green, he is just a slightly more palatable version of the same fighter he's been for the last 8 years, and that's good enough for me. So hooray to getting 1% better every day.
Yeah, good for those. Good for the guys just trugging along. I got 3 bulls. My number 3 bull is Kevin Holland, and I'll say this: he didn't fight. He didn't fight tonight. First of all, he took a short notice fight against Trevin Giles. Right before they go to fight, Trevin Giles passes out. Instead of licking his wounds, he goes to Twitter. This is not going to happen, but he calls for a fight with Ed Herman, whose opponent also dropped out earlier that evening, up another weight. Remember, Kevin Holland he just recently fought at welterweight. Was willing to go all the way up to light heavyweight against Ed Herman. How willing was he? Normally, I would say probably not, but he's shown he'll take crazy fights. So just tweeting out hey, I want to fight so bad I'll fight Ed Herman. Kevin Holland's Twitter is on the rise for me. My number 2 is guys you just talked about, Jamal Emmers and Bobby Green. I'm not sure I know the name of their team is, but they're teammates and they went 2-0 on the evening. So that team, do you know the name of their team by any chance?
I have Emmers down as being from Pinnacle MMA. I don't know if that
might be it. That actually, yes, that is it. I'm almost positive. You click on Bobby Green, that's the team, Pinnacle MMA. So, on the rise, Pinnacle MMA. If we're wrong about that, we apologize.
You're right.
It is okay. So Pinnacle MMA, and they're what area are they in? Kansas? No. Where are they? Where's Bobby Green from?
I grew up in California, but he came. Yeah.
All right. Wherever Pinnacle, yeah, I think you're right. Pinnacle is somewhere in California. I was mixing up Bobby Green with Jason Knight for a second because he's from Kansas City. They went 2-0 in the evening. So congratulations to those guys. And my number 1, it's got to be Jennifer Maia. I mean, she went from fighting Vivian Araújo to suddenly fighting Joanne Calderwood to getting the win and getting called out by the champion Valentina Shevchenko. She's won 3 out of 4. She might have got herself a title shot by beating a late replacement and getting a first round stoppage. So my number 1 bull is going to be Jennifer Maia. I don't know if it's an award to get to fight Valentina Shevchenko, but she somehow did it. Give me a grade for the card.
I'll give this one a C.
Okay.
There were a couple of individual interesting moments, but there were some frustrating finishes, some frustrating judges' decisions, some that would have made people on either side mad, and just so much stuff fell off. Like, chaos is kind of interesting for a while, but we've been in the midst of so many chaotic cards for the last 5 months, or no cards at all for some of that, but then just such chaos as the UFC tries to string things together. I mean, we had an 8-fight card tonight that would have been a 7-fight card if not for just 2 debuting guys against each other who neither of them may not really be UFC material for all we know. Like, we're getting to the point where, okay, this is a card that maybe could have, should have been just canceled.
Yeah, that fight had a Contender Series feel to it. Mm-hmm. I think this might be the lowest grade that I've given a card since we've been doing this. I know when I used to do this with John Franklin, I've given out some really low scores, but I'm going D+. The last 3 fights saved it for me from getting F because they were exciting. There was some, the Maya one was probably the most exciting. Lee K's knockout was fantastic. Those stoppages helped me, but when you have 2 fights canceled the day of the fight, that's going to disappoint me. Somehow, I don't know how, but people convinced me to be excited about Ed Herman and Jared Mercer, and somehow was kind of excited to see those 2 guys. I don't know why I was excited to see those 2 guys fight each other, but MMA Twitter got me into Ed Herman and Gerald. Dave's shout out to Chicken Parm, Dave Stewart, who's really into Ed Herman. Yeah, but I mean, all these weird cancellations, the draw, the nut shots, half the card ended in decisions, but the prelims seemed like it was taking forever. I'll give it a D+. So not the best card. So if you missed it, you got this recap. You don't have to rewatch it. Ben.
Yes, sir.
What do you got going on this week? Anything exciting people should check out?
Well, I mean, the series I've been working on for the site is I have been redrafting the Ultimate Fighter, starting with the very first season back in 2005, because, with a few exceptions, every season has started with a draft where the coaches pick their fighters. And I've been going back and redrafting each season based on how each fighter actually turned out. Mm-hmm. I finished season 9 last week. Season 10, which is the heavyweight season that had, Kimbo Slice and all that, is this week. So look for that to drop on Thursday or Friday. People seem to be having a lot of fun with it, whether they disagree or agree. It's kind of a nice trip down memory lane to remember all the wild shit that happened.
Okay, I don't remember everybody who was on that season. I'm assuming Roy. Don't give it away. I'm assuming Big Roy Nelson's number 1, but I don't remember who was on it. So there might be a heavyweight that definitely was better than him. But if you put Brendan Schaub last, then come on, don't do that. Don't hate on Brendan Schaub. Thing to check out for me is actually, let me ask you this question: all the Contender Series, not Contender Series, all the Ultimate Fighter. Who's the greatest Ultimate Fighter?
It's probably either Griffin, Evans, or Whitaker. I don't know.
Bisping. Just that long. He has that like long. He's like that. What's the guy there? The Jets quarterback. The one who won the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 3. What's his name? The guy that was
Joe Namath.
Yeah, he's like a Joe Namath, like big, like popular, but was like never that good. He had that one title, but he has kind of like longevity. Like, is there an NFL player that had like just not that good, but is like longevity? That kind of gets him in the Hall of Fame. Like, that's how I feel Bisping was. Like, he was like top 10 for like 10 years, but was never near the top.
And he's a good indication of how much the perception of you changes if you win a belt, whether it was deserved or not,
That's
whether you
right.
kind of like lucked into something and just had the punch of your life or not. It changes the way your whole career is looked at, because he wouldn't even be in the conversation except for that left hook Larry moments against Rockhold, when we had already decided that, okay, he's up there with the best of the best guys who never won a title.
That's right.
But he moves into a whole different discussion just by winning one. And weirdly enough, he's the one that actually managed to defend it. The first 4 Ultimate Fighter winners won a title. Griffin, Evans, Bisping, and Sarah. Of those
oh my God.
4, only one defended it.
That's a good stat. Like, that's the one you don't even think of. So you mentioned Matt Serra, how people change your perception. If Matt Serra went against George St. Pierre and George St. Pierre did what everyone expected him to, like he did in the second fight, just ran right through, we'd be looking at Matt Serra like we look at Tim Elliott. Like, oh yeah, remember he got a title shot because he won the Contender Series. I mean, I keep calling it Contender, the Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah.
That's how Matt Serra would be viewed. Instead, he's in the UFC Hall of Fame because he landed a punch that hit George St. Pierre in the back of the head, and 1 in a million punch. Everything wanted, he ducked his head, hit him in the back, and then he never really recovered. But I kept messing up and saying Contender Series. The reason why, because Contender Series is on my mind. If you guys are, I got messaged by it's kind of cool that people message me about this. People are asking me about, hey, dude, you did it for the last 2 years. You've been previewing the Contender Series. Are you going to do this? I am, but I'm not writing it. It is going to be exclusive here on the Loudmouth MMA Sherdog Radio Network. It will be popping up late Monday night. I'm watching the film. Right now we have 4 fights. There's supposed to be a 5th fight. I'm not sure if we're going to get to that one because it hasn't been announced yet. But I will be previewing all the Contender Series, but it will be podcast form. Same way as I did last time, just instead of reading, you get to listen to me talk about it. So make sure you guys... Good.
I lived for those things the last couple of years. They've been so helpful to me.
Thanks, my man. I appreciate that. But it's going to save me time. I don't have to write them. I will just talk them. Guys, we did it. This card was crazy. Somehow we went much longer than I did on only 8 fights. And, somehow we did the same amount of time for 8 fights as we did last week for 15 fights. And then we got into Michael Bisping legacy talk. I don't know. Guys, we'll be back with this crazy. I mean, there's a Bellator card. There's a bunch of stuff coming up this week. So just stay locked to the channel. Head over to Sherdog. Check out all of Ben's stuff and all the guys over there. And we'll be back next week, guys.
Yep.